Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today I would like to share with you how you can get two table runners, identical and yet opposite, and they're all out of one piece of fabric. The whole trick to this is the fabric. We are needing a piece of fabric. It has that large stripe going down that selvage, and they print them so that we can get 4 identical stripes along that fabric. It's not along that width of the fabric, it's coming down that length. This fabric is going to give me 2 table runners, and they're going to have beautiful 60-degree angles on them. So your print is going to go all the way around. So we're going to have the print, and it's going to keep going. So there's no break in anything that you are doing. The reason I can get 2 runners from this fabric is because I have those 4 long strips. So the first thing we need to do is cut apart those strips, and they need to be the same size in that width, and they need to be matching. So in my case, I have the division right here in those white spots. So I can get my rotary cutter and my ruler, line them up, and cut them apart. Once I have these cut apart, I do want to join them back together. But I want to join them, so in my case, the words are all on the outside. So I'm going to take those long strips, and now those words are going to be on the outside. So I'm going to take 2 strips and match them together, so I have one pattern on the outside, and the other 2 strips, I'm going to need to match them so the pattern is in the inside. And this is going to get me the 2 table runners that are the same and yet opposite. So I'm going to be able to just fold those together so I know that those edges are going to line up for me. We press them, and we're going to sew on that center line. So for that one pattern, I'm going to be sewing so that the words are together. On the second one, I'm going to be sewing so that the pattern is together. Now, I'm not going to sew the whole strip. I'm going to start at one end and stitch all the way down to the other. You can see how long this is going to be. You're going to stop stitching at about 15 inches. So you're going to have 15 inches that is left open on that one side. And you're going to need that space in both of those strips. So stitch all the way using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and leave that 15-inch opening. Once you've stitched those 2 pieces together, be sure to give them a good press. This pressing is important because it is important that they are straight and flat to start off with. So I have those 2 pieces sewn where the center of the pattern meets, and the 2 pieces where the words are meeting up. Now lay these together and match up those seams, and we're going to cut them together. We're going to cut them together with 60-degree angles. And we're going to be able to get that angle from our rulers. It won't matter the ruler size, we just need to have the markings. We have a 45 and a 30. It's all about this 60 that we need. So just to make sure that I don't accidentally use a 45 or a 30-degree mark, I'm just going to cover it with a little piece of tape, and I'm going to take that tape off as soon as I'm done. That 60-degree angle, we get 2 angles. One coming from that corner all the way up, and one coming from the other corner coming up. And we're going to use both of those angles. We're going to do it right on our fabric. So I have the seam that I've sewn and that open seam all on one side. So our first 60-degree cut is going to come from this edge where we did not have everything put together. We're still going to use that angle, and just take that angle and just line it up right along your edge of fabric. And just slide it until you've cleared this corner. 60 degrees right along this edge, and the ruler is coming here. This is a true 60 degree, and that is the first one we get to cut off. Once again, this 60 degree line is where all the seams are sewn together. And this up here is where all the edges are loose. It's straight. Now I can cut. These first 4 pieces, unfortunately, we're going to have to discard those. Now we're going to do a second 60 degree angle. And we're just going to be able to rotate that ruler onto that other 60 degree line, because we had one going in this direction and one going in that direction. I'm going to go right up to this corner. That edge is following that 60 degree, and I have a triangle sticking out. This is a 60 degree triangle, and that's exactly what you want. Take a deep breath and just cut that triangle. So we now have 4 triangles. We need one more 60 degree line. So we have that 60 degree mark, just rotating the ruler. Just slide that ruler over so it's always following that 60 degree line. In my case, I do have some stitching threads, and that's okay because I'm going to be able to remove those. I would rather take out a little bit of stitching than to have to stitch all of those layers together after. Now I'm going to cut that second triangle off. I need to do one more 60 degree angle, and that's going to be on the other side of this strip. I'm smoothing out those seams. I'm making sure they're all matching. If this was wrinkled, it would not be as nice. And I know those seams are already set, so I don't have to worry about it. These 4 pieces are both stitched together and lined up. I need to do my 60 degree angle on this side. Once again, we're going to want this loose layer where that little point is going to be, and the 60 degree line is going to go along this area where we did the stitching. So line up your 60 degree line and just slide that ruler down. This part of the ruler up at that point, I can now cut off that 60 degree mark. And unfortunately, this one is going to have to be discarded. But we do have 8 triangles, and these 8 triangles are going to finish this off. So I'm going to have this 60 degree angle the same on both sides. So if I take that one side and bring it over, you can see that that angle is the same. That's all the cutting we need to do, so we can put this away. When we open up this strip, we're going to have already that line sewn together. We'll need to just take out a couple of stitches. It's just going to be easier to sew if we re-sew that once we put our ends on. All we have to do is take a look at the triangles, and we'll be able to figure out which one will need to go there. I'm looking for the triangles with the words along the outside. So that is going to fit right into there. And this one is going to fit on this side. So you can see why it'll be just good to just take a couple of those stitches out. So I'm going to sew this edge together. And it's just a straight seam. Match up everything. And I like to make sure that in this case, my stripes are matching up. And I'm going to pin those stripes together so they don't shift on me. And this is one seam that I do like to add extra pins because this is on an angle and we don't want to stretch that. I'm going to be able to move this out of the way and finish pinning it. So this is one straight seam. I'm going to be able to pin on this second piece. You can see where that's going to go together. And this is a straight line. We're going to be able to do that after. So flip so those edges are matching. Match up any of those lines or those markings. And then we're going to be able to go to the machine and sew that one side and then sew that next side. Once those two angles are stitched together with that straight row, when we fold it back on both sides, we're going to be able to continue this row of stitching. Now, I don't press it at this point. I'm just going to take that, match it up. I'm going to have one seam go in one direction and the other seam go in the opposite direction. And I'm just going to finger press this corner. Pin those together, match up anything that needs to be matched up, and then we're going to be able to just start where we've had to take out and stitch down. Now that that one row has been secured and all of those angles are stitched down, we now are going to be able to open that up. So I have the words going in the right direction and the flowers going in the right direction. To press this, I do like to take the seam and press it just as we fingered pressed it. And in the center one, press that flat. But before we do it, let's get to the next side. I do have my stitching coming right to that end, so I'm just going to have to remove a little bit, but it definitely was handy keeping it straight. Open up your piece and find your next two triangles. I do have a little bit stitched there, so I can remove that. I left about a 15-inch opening. You could leave a 20-inch opening if you do not want to remove this little bit of stitching. So I can see those are the ones that are going to go together. And you really will be able to see the difference. So you'll know which triangles to put onto each end. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip that over, pin it, do a straight row of stitching, flip this over, match it, do a straight row of stitching, and then go back and then finish off that seam. And I'm going to do that to both of these long strips. This one, the writing was on the outside. The next ones, I will have the writing on the inside. I do want to give you a little note right here where we're sewing that last seam. This is the area that we took apart a little bit in order to put those triangles on. Because we did not leave a 1/4-inch seam allowance on those triangle tips, we're going to have a little bit of a difference in that seam. And that is actually something that I'd rather have. We have 3 bias seams. So if your 1/4-inch is a little bit big, you're going to end up with a bump. I would rather have less than and let that fabric stretch a little bit to make it go flat. So I've just picked up that stitching and I've just straightened myself up and finished stitching all the way to the end. So when you do open that up, this area will still lie flat. There's so much stretch going on in here. I would rather the fabric stretch just a little bit than to have a bump. So we now have 2 table runners from the same fabric, both the same, and yet they're opposite. Now making the 2 of them out of that one piece of fabric means we have very little waste. This is all that was left over from that 2 yards of fabric. And I now have 2 table runners, 78 inches. Now we could sandwich these together and quilt them and just make it reversible. But I do have someone that I know is going to like a matching one. So I'm going to get these quilted, bound, and they're going to be ready for my table. And by sewing those 2 layers of fabric first means that we didn't have any shifting. We didn't have to match up here. We were able to press them and get them all ready and trimmed. So those 60-degree cuts give us a continuous pattern, especially when we have that striped fabric. They're quick, they're fun, and well, you get 2 for the price of 1 piece of fabric. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I do have a newsletter. It's all free under Sew Very Easy. And be sure to make every day a Sewtacular day. Bye for now.